Unless you were from the day, it's hard to describe exactly how popular Pac-Man was when it first came out. Now you know about, of course, the video game, you know about the cartoon, you know about the breakfast cereal, and it was like Time Magazine's Man of the Year and stuff like that. It was everywhere, and it was kind of a game that everybody could pick up and play. I say pick up, it was in the arcade, but still. Pac-Man was huge, it all started with the arcade, and in this video, I'm going to cover games that are Pac-Man, specifically the arcade port of Pac-Man. And maybe later on we'll do all the other Pac-Man games that came around it, because there's a ton of them that are out there. But for this video, from the arcade to your home consoles and computer as well, Pac-Man was just the it thing. And if you did Pac-Man like I do, you gotta check out this Pac-Man Birth of an Icon book. This book is gigantic. And with this, it comes with a couple of extra special surprises, including a collector's coin right up here. And this guy pops out. This here is the official reissue of the single, the vinyl, the Pac-Man Fever song. Has lyrics on the back and everything. And the book itself is full of factoids and history and trivia, where it came from, what was going on with the name and all that. Oh, you even had little sheet music. How about that? Yeah, Pacman, huh? Bringing it out in America and all that. Anyway, this book, it's heavy. And it even goes on to talk about, like, you know, the other games, the spin-offs and everything else too. Again, this thing is action-packed. If you love Pac-Man, you gotta grab the book, my friend. Link in the description for this guy. It's so heavy. Well, we got the OG Pac-Man. This is the arcade version of Pac-Man. Now, to tell you up front, I am recording this game footage and all of the game footage from this video off my Mister. And Pac-Man here, don't need to talk a whole lot about it. You know it, you love it. The arcade version just feels better as the arcade version, more than the other console versions. There's a couple of them that are pretty close, but I don't think any of them ever quite got it 100%. Like, I swear, in the arcade version of Pac-Man, you kind of drift around corners. It's not just like, you know, up then left. You kind of drift around a little bit. You got to feel for that. I love that. It started here. It's iconic. It's an S. Wait, am I ranking these? No, I guess I'm going to rank these now. Yeah, Pac-Man's an S. Of course it is. And well, maybe I should rank these, because the next one I'm talking about is the Atari 2600 version. Oh my goodness. Now, I remember when we first got our Atari 2600, we were late in the game. 1981 was when we picked ours up, because that's when Pac-Man came out for it. And this is what we got. Now, you can argue that it's Pac-Man, but this is an official port of Pac-Man. Imagine if there was like the #1 game in the world, and this is the port you got, and you're just like, all right, that's fine. This is what we're doing now. So, inspired by Pac-Man, doesn't look great. I gotta tell you though, it's not as bad as a lot of people make out to be. I played a ton of this, and I knew it wasn't Pac-Man the arcade version. I mean, I saw it, and I was like, well, it doesn't look like the Pac-Man I saw in the arcade, but you know what? It'll have to do. I played a whole lot of this game. Most would give it an F. I'm actually giving it a D, because I'm ranking these among themselves, and I still like this game, and I think I still play it every once in a while. An F would mean I would never play it ever again. And there's several games on the Atari 2600 that is the case. Now, if I was going to give this game an F, it's because I would never play this ever again. This game, however, I come back to it, just for old time's sake. Now, Pac-Man for the 5800, it got a little bit better. It actually does kind of resemble the arcade version a little bit if it was squished in a hydraulic press. And because it's squished like this, it allows for more dots to pick up, especially on when it's like on a horizontal line. Same style of map, just a little bit different. And the 5800, unlike the 2600, gives you the cutscene after you beat 2 stages. And we'll watch it right now. And we'll also see if some of the other games later on in this list feature this cutscene too. I was like, oh, a video game with a cutscene. Oh my goodness, this is Hollywood. They did make Pac-Man for the Intellivision. That's right. And this Pac-Man for the Intellivision, condensed a little bit. It has some missing things to it a little bit, as you can see. You know, it's not quite one-to-one to the arcade. And there's something about this one, like, you stutter when you're eating. Like, you don't just, like, zip through it. You kind of stop and stall, just for a split second, just for a little bit. It's not that it plays bad, but that stuttering that it does, that throws off your everything, and it makes it so, I mean, there's a little bit of a strategy, I guess. Like, if you're trying to run away from the ghosts, don't eat the dots, because, you know, it might stall you just enough time to, you know, get hit. I do like that it looks a little bit more like Pac-Man should, but still not great. I'm actually giving this game a D as well. But does Pac-Man for the Intellivision feature the cutscene? Of course it does. It's not bad. Okay, I'll take it. Well, what about Pac-Man for the Apple IIe? Well, I guess we can cover this for a moment. Now notice that it says Pac-Man and not Pac-Man. Well, Pac-Man is supposed to have a hyphen. Well, you know, whatever. And this one, hey, so far, nicely done. They actually decided to keep the aspect ratio. Well, the best they could anyway. Now you're white instead of yellow. We'll be okay with that. And there's something about this version of Pac-Man where I don't think the ghosts behave like they behave in the arcade. Like as if like somebody made this game saying, oh, the ghosts chase you and that's it. In the arcade, I mean, there's like some strategy to it. Like different ghosts have different maneuvering patterns and everything. This one, it looks like they kind of do and they totally kind of don't. Like sometimes they just bum rush you from all angles and there's no strategy. The strategy is move away as fast as you can. You know, sometimes you just gotta deal with it, man. It's a little more difficult than the other Pac-Man games. In fact, this one may be the most difficult of all the Pac-Man games I've ever played as a port of the arcade version of Pac-Man. Not bad. Ugh, it's just, ooh. But I'll give it a C. How about that? Seriously though, what we really want to know is, does Pac-Man for the Apple IIe feature the cutscene? Good news, it does. Oh, do you see that Pac-Man? That was like the hospital scene from Exorcist 3. That was a that was a chase. Now this is the NES version of Pac-Man. I'm playing the Tengen version here, but both of them are really the same. And again, not one-to-one with the arcade version of Pac-Man. First of all, you're kind of an orangish color instead of yellow. I'm okay with that, whatever. And you can nitpick a little bit more where, like, you know, especially at the top, there's like the two squares that are next to each other, then two more squares next to each other. When one of them's supposed to be a square, one of them's supposed to be a rectangle. Again, it's like these little things that doesn't really matter. But if you're a huge fan of Pac-Man, maybe it does. Now, although this is the NES version of Pac-Man, this one also might be the Pac-Man that's ported the most to other things, like you know, Pac-Man compilations or Pac-Man collections, and they'll throw a Pac-Man game on there, and it happens to be the NES version of Pac-Man. It's actually really good. It's not bad. Has a couple of things you can nitpick about, but it's a decent version of Pac-Man. And as far as Pac-Man goes, I'll give it an A. And of course, it features the cutscene. After Pac-Man for NES, we get Pac-Man for the Game Boy Classic. And this was a different idea, because this one, instead of featuring a super small screen, it just zoomed in on the screen, and the screen scrolled with you. That's right, we have a scrolling classic Pac-Man, which I didn't care for, because sometimes I'm like, where's the last dot? I don't see it anywhere. I've eaten them all. But then you find it like in some corner somewhere. You're like, oh, okay, there it is. But you don't know where, you can't just see it at a glance. You gotta, like, you know, move around the map until you find it and finally get to it and all that. And this one's, again, it's not super, super terrible. I'll give it a C just because I wish it wasn't. I wish I'd give you the option at least for one or the other. It doesn't. Doesn't matter that it's in black and white, it still plays fine, but it's just, I mean, it's just not all there. I'm actually not even going to bother defeating 2 levels to even see if there's a cutscene. I'm sure it's there, though. Then for Game Boy Color, we got Pac-Man Special Color Edition. Now this one actually features Pac-Man and Pac-Attack. I love Pac-Attack, but that'll be another video for another time. This one, same idea, but everything's zoomed in. And again, with the 2 sets of 2 squares on top instead of 1 square, 1 rectangle, it's not the end of the world. But it's, I mean, it's just one of those small little things, you know. You defeat a couple levels of this, does it feature the cutscene? Of course it does. Classic cutscene, love it. There's the chase, that's right. The Pac-Man Collection, this is for the Game Boy Advance. This one features a couple different Pac-Man gameplays, but this one of course also features this, the OG, the original, and 2 options, full screen or scroll. Now this one, the 2 sets of 2 squares on top, look, you got a square and a rectangle. Well, kind of a square. You know what, I'll take it, I'll take it. So this is the full screen version of Pac-Man here, and it plays pretty well. And this one, I gotta give it up to the Game Boy Advance, and this is one of the reasons why Game Boy Advance is super underrated as what could be probably the best video game system of all time, especially when it comes to ports and things like that, is this one actually features that little drift around corners. You don't really see it really well, but you can feel it. Got the zoomed in screen. And believe it or not, this version I don't mind playing, because the Game Boy Advance had that wide screen. It doesn't scroll left and right, it just scrolls up and down. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And again, you can kind of see it, that little drift around corners. That makes such a world of difference. I can't explain why. I'm not going to explain why because I can't. But it's so great. It's so awesome. But this one, you know what? It's funny. Like this version here, because there's 2 options on it. Yes, it comes from the Pac-Man Collection, which features other Pac-Man gameplays. There's the arranged version and stuff like that too. But just if you're looking for classic arcade Pac-Man, even though it's zoomed in, on the Game Boy Advance. I'm also giving this one an S. It just feels right. This is the most like arcade Pac-Man, even though it's zoomed in, that I've felt personally when I'm looking for my Pac-Man stuff. And trust me, I'm older than old. I'm old enough to be Santa Claus father, and this game feels like the way Pac-Man should have been from the start, outside of the arcade, of course. Again, the arcade is the one to measure everything by, and this one, to me, is the closest like the arcade. And I'm probably wrong, especially if you're a Pac-Man pro and you know what all the ghosts do and all that, which I don't. I just hope for the best, you know. I have no strategy outside of don't die, but this one just feels the best to me. I just briefly want to show you this from the X68000. This is another version of Pac-Man. I don't know how legit this is. I know it says Namcot, I know it says Pac-Man, I know it says all that. It has some Russian words down at the bottom. So that's why I'm saying, like, well, you know. And trust me, that's coming from me who's half Russian. However, I mean, Pac-Man's pink, the ghosts are pink, and I love the fact that the ghosts look like they have Google eyes. To me, that's pretty awesome. Nah, it plays fine like Pac-Man. I'm not even gonna rate this with the other ones because I don't know how legit this game is as far as officially licensed. It probably is. It might be. But I'm not going to take any chances. It's fine to look at. I just wanted to show you this really quickly. And although Pac-Man's from yesteryear, you want to check out Contra and all the great Contra games from the arcade, the NES, all the way to like Game Boy Advance, that era, just that kind of style of Contra game. Check out this video over here, and we'll see you soon.